mother. Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of both of their parents. Friends of Avi Gittler in his memory, the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris in her memory, friends of Joe Wolf, Charlie Gelkenstein, and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona. Month of learning from Ronald I.E. Ruvain and Susan Podolsky for his father, Phyllis and Chaim Reese, her mother, Sam and Shifra Coleman, his mother, Charlie Gelfenstein, his mother, the ladies of Boca in memory of their dear friend, Michael and Sharon Glass, weeks now, Michael and Sharon Glass for his mother. A day of learning plus Torah fund, Harriet Brick in memory of her husband, Toby and Gary Greenstein, her mother, Hadassah and Marvin Bienenfeld, her mother. A day of learning plus Shalosh Shudis, Matthew and Charlie Silverman, his mother. A day of learning with no added bonuses, Herman and Linda Newman, his father, Esther Solachowski, her brother, Bob and Judy Thaler, somebody else's mother, Amy Jacobson's mother, Walter and Sippy Fried, his father, Jack Kaufman, his mother, Sheila and Eli Zimmerman, her mother, Zahava Baum, her husband, Elaine and Harold Rim, her father, Paul and Bob Bromberg, who has, I think, yahrzeit today. Menachem Ben Chaim. We'll dedicate our learning in his memory, that his neshama should have an aliyah, and Gary Cooperberg, his son. Hence, we may begin. All right. We wait till late 30? Day 24. Day 26. Okay, that's the usual. Check to see if they can. All right, I'll start early. In other words, I'll just go back and do the bottom of Yud Omid Beis. You don't even have to open the Gemara to it. We'll just pick up there. By the time I get to the top of Yud Aleph, I'm stalling. Okay, I should have read the names of the dead people. All right. Tanya, we have a Brycer with Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer. The Tishrei Nivra Ha'olam, the world was actually created by Hashem in the month of Tishrei. The Tishrei Noldu Avos, Avraham and Yaakov were both born in Tishrei. The Tishrei Mesu Avos, Avraham and Yaakov both died in Tishrei. Pesach Noldu Yitzchak, the middle of the three Avos was born, Yitzchak was born in Pesach. Baruch Hashanah Nifkid Sora Rachel V'chana. On the first of Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah L'Shanim, God remembered these three barren women and promised them that in the relatively near future they would have children. And on Rosh Hashanah, Yotze Yosef Mibeis Asurin, on Rosh Hashanah, Joseph was released from jail by Paro, turning the page, and now I think I have to wait for 2 minutes. So I will refresh our memory that Rebbe Yeshua had a different price, had a slightly different list. And Rebbe Yeshua said the world was created in Nisan, that all three of us were born in Nisan and died in Nisan. And he concurs that the women were remembered in Tishrei. He concurs that Yosef got out of jail in Tishrei. And I'm running out of stall time.
All right. So the people that are here are the people that are going to be
No, there were two people
There are
online.
two people who go online at 8:30. We'll work it out. As soon as Rabbi Green comes back.
We're online. We're already here. You can go on.
All right, Ad Khan. Okay, so now
We're here.
continue. Rebbe Eliezer Bryce at the top of Yud Aleph Amid Aleph. Rosh Hashanah Batla Avoda Ma'avoseinu Mitzrayim. 6 months prior, a little bit more, to the actual Yetzias Mitzrayim, we are in the series of Makos already, and the Egyptian society was sufficiently disrupted by the early Makos that the Jews were no longer ordered to report in to build Pitum and Ramses and other projects. So it from Rosh Hashanah, meaning the first of Tishrei, the slavery was abolished, as it were, or at least the work parts of the slavery were abolished. And the Nisan Nigalu, Nisan, they were redeemed, they got out of Egypt. The Tishrei Asidin Legael, and Rebbe Eliezer says that Mashiach will come in the month of Tishrei. Rebbe Yeshua Omer, wrapping up, we're just reminding us that Rebbe Yeshua said, "B'Nisan nivra olam," that the world was created in Nisan. B'Nisan noldu avos, Abraham and Yaakov were born in Nisan, not in Tishrei. B'Nisan mesu avos, they died therefore also in Nisan, and we'll find out why. The Pesach nolad Yitzchak, nobody disagrees on that. Rosh Hashanah Nifkid Sarah Rachel V'Chana, they all both agree that the women were remembered, the barren women were remembered on Rosh Hashanah in Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah Yotze Yosef Mi Beis Asurin, they agree Yosef got out of jail on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah Batla Avoda Ba'avoseinu Mitzrayim, they both agree that the workload was removed from them in Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei. B'Nisan Negalu, everybody agrees Nisan Pesach is in Nisan. And B'Nisan Asidin Ligael, Mashiach will come next time around. Mashiach will come in Nisan. Okay, so how do they know all this? So there's a brisa, Tanya. Rebbe Eliezer Aimer Menayin Shabbatishrei Nivra Ha'olam. How do I know? Where can I find psukim that tell me Nisan was the likely creation of the world? Shnamar Tishrei. I'm going to keep confusing them because we're going back and forth. Tishrei was the beginning of the world. Shnamar V'yomer Elokim, Tadshe ha'aretz desha, let the world be covered with plants, Esev mazriya, vegetables, plants that have seeds, that produce seeds, and zera eitz pri, and then mazriya zera, plants that seeds, and then eitz pri, fruit trees, and the implication is laden with fruits. Ezehu chodesh ha'aretz maleya tishayim. What is the month that there is heavy vegetation on the ground? The ilan mole peiros, and the trees are laden with fruit. Hare Omer said Tishrei. We're talking about Tishrei. That if we know in Nisan, we'll say in a few minutes, there's a bracha you make for the blossoms, and it takes through the summer for the fruit to develop and ripen. And in the fall, in this late summer, early fall, there are lots of. So that has to be when the world was created, because the world was created with fully developed fruit trees, according to that pasuk.
What if you're in South Africa or Australia?
Pardon me?
What if you're in South Africa or Australia?
And that south of the equator, it works the other way. But they were north of the equator, and all the references are to where they were. It is true that, and it also is possible that before the flood, one of the Midrashim talks about that the earth originally was vertical in its axis, and there were not seasons. And during the Mei Noach, during the flood, the earth shifted on its axis, and that's why there was such tumultuous water, not just coming down, but also gushing up. And it's possible that from a Torah perspective, that seasons were only post-flood. So that would answer up your question. Okay, V'yoso Perexman Revia Hoisa, and that is also in Israel the beginning of the rainy season, toward the end of Tishrei. And the V'yor du Geshamim V'tzimchu, and there is a pasuk in the second round of the Genesis story that said that Adam and Chava prayed for rain, and the rain came, and that's what produced the foliage. Shenemar, the Eid Ya'alim in Haaretz, the mist rose up from the land and became clouds and then rain. So this is actually ecologically correct, that the water rises from the earth, it evaporates, creates clouds, and comes back down. So these are rayas that the world was created in Tishrei. Rabbi Yeshua Aimer Menayan B'Nisan Nivra'ila. No, let's fix it. Where do I have my sources where I argue the world was created in Nisan? Shenemar, I'm looking at other creation story psukim. V'toitze ha'ores desha esev, Mizriazera. The land brought forth vegetation. In other words, the vegetation began with the seeded plants. Eitz osepri, trees which will generate fruit. So now we're talking about earlier in the agricultural cycle. Ezehu chodesh haaretz motzia deshaim the elyon mitzi peiros. Which month is the beginning of the agricultural cycle, where the trees blossom and begin producing fruit? Hare Omer is a Nisan. You have to say that's Nisan, the beginning of spring. The Oso HaPerex Man Behema V'chaya V'of Shemizdavigin Ze Eitzel Ze. Also, the spring is when the various animate creatures' juices start surging, and the female animals go into heat, and the animals start mating. So that's also an indicator that it's spring, a time that this happens. Or Nisan Shenemar, love shu. We had this pasuk earlier. Love shu karim hatzain. The sheep became clad, and grew. Literally, it means the sheep grew wool, but we interpret it to mean they became pregnant when we learned it. When Reuben did it on Sunday, I think. So that's the deal. The Idach, what does Rabbi Eliezer do with Nami Huksiv Eitz Oisepri? We had one pasuk that said Eitz Pri and another pasuk Eitz Oisepri. How does he work with the second pasuk? Hahu lebracha ledairos hu diksiv. He says the second reference is a blessing to the world for the future. That at the first time around, God created apple trees with apples and orange trees with oranges. But in the future, those oranges will fall off or be harvested. And on an annual basis, most plants will produce new fruit. And that's how he calls that a bracha to the universe. The idach namihaksiv eitz pri. So Reb Yeshua, what does he do with eitz pri? Who could the Rebbe Yeshua ben Levi? He says that eitz pri comes to give us the drasha from Yeshua ben Levi. The Omer of Yeshua ben Levi, Kol Maisa Bereshis, everything that occurred during the 6 days of creation, Bimkamoson Nivro, were fully, properly formed. In other words, animals were an adult stage. They weren't little baby animals. Plants were fully grown. They didn't go through the seedling and process. They were just completely fully grown. V'daiton nivra'u, and they were born according to their nature, meaning animals would start mating, plants would start generating seeds. O tzivyonon nivra'u, they were born with their taivas. Animals were hungry and horny, were interested in mating. Shenemar, vayichulu hashamayim v'ritz v'chol tziva'u. They were fully formed, completed. Al tikrei tziva'am ela tzivyono. They were already interested in mating. Okay, so that's how they deal with the differing words in each other's psukim. Now, we're going to continue going through the Brisa, and we're going to discuss why each of the Tanaim picks the date he picks for the other Inyanim highlighted in the original two Brises. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Menayin Shenivre Noldo Avos. How do I know that with the date that the Avos were born, which is Tishrei in his opinion? Tishrei Noldos Avos. Shenemar, we have a pasuk. V'yikahalu el hamelech, they gathered a Shlomo. When the Beis Hamikdash Rishon was inaugurated, all the people gathered around Shlomo, called Ish Yisrael, all the people, all the male Jews. V'yerach ha'esonim b'chag. Now, the word Esonim means the powerful people, the great ones. One of the names of Abraham is Eson. So, and this was Chag, was Sukkos. Okay? Yerech shenoldu bo Esone oilam. What is the month where the great ones, that's the same month that the great ones, meaning Avram and Yaakov, were born. Okay? Now, Rabbi Eliezer says that this word Esonim means the great ones, meaning the Avos. My mashmahi Eson. What does the word Eson mean? Lishne de sakifehu. This is the very big people. Dixiv Eson Moshav Mishabecha. Your mighty ones are dwelling. The Omer, Shimu Harim es Riv Hashem, and we have a pasuk in Tehillim that the mountains heard the arguments of God, whatever that is. V'ha'esonim moiste oretz, and the great ones, which are the foundation of the world. So we see that the word Eson means big ones. The Omer in another pasuk says, Kol David he nezeh ba medaleg al haharim mekafetz al ha-gevos. That pasuk says that the Kol Dodi, the voice of my beloved, he nezeh ba, is coming. Medagle al ha'orim, jumping over the mountains. Mekafetz el ha'gevaos, and leaping over the tall hills like Superman. Okay, so we're going to Medaleg al ha'orim, this Lusavos. The jumping over the mountains is in the credit of the patriarchs. Mekafetz al hagavaos, leaping over tall hills, is biskus imos, is in the merit of the wives of the patriarchs. So that's his opinion. Rabbi Yeshua Omer minayin shebenisan noldu avos. How about I have rayas that they were actually born in Nisan. Shenemar vayihi b'shemoinim shana. It was 400 shana, 480 years. Let's say Bnei Israel meretz Mitzrayim, that the Jews came after the Jews came out of Egypt. B'shana haravi'is b'chodesh zu, and the Beis Hamikdash being built in the 4th year of Solomon's reign, in the b'chodesh ziv, in the shiny month. B'yerach shenoldu bo ziv sonei olam, the month that the shiny ones, meaning the Avos, the glowing ones, the Avos were born. So that's his raya. So what does he do with the previous reference to the great ones? Hasam to kife b'mitzvos. He is saying that Tishrei is called the great one among the months, because if you go through the calendar, the month that has the most mitzvahs is Tishrei. You have Shofar, you have Tainis for Yom Kippur, you have all the varying Musafim and the Lulav and the Esrog, etc., etc. The Aravos. Tishrei is laden with mitzvahs. The Idach, what about Rabbi Eliezer? He also has the problem that Nisan is called a shiny month. Hahu de isbe ziva ha'elonai. He will say that is a reference to the beautiful flowers, the colorful flowers that appear on the trees in the month of Nisan. The Omer Rav Yehuda, as we learn from Rav Yehuda, Haiman the Nafek the human Nisan. If you go out for a trip or a walk on the month of Nisan, Chaze Ilone, the Milav Leve, you will see blossoming trees. And you make a bracha. Baruch Shaloch Hiser Me Alamo Klum. Blessed are you, O God, who didn't leave anything out of the world. Uborabo Berios Toivos, and made beautiful things. Elonos Toivos, beautiful trees. Hanisnoos Behem B'nei Adam, and these flowers will eventually generate fruit, which we will take benefit from. So that's a bracha made in Nisan, and that is what he does with the word ziv. So now, we also said that the opinion that the Avos were born in Tishrei, at least 2 of them died in Tishrei. The opinion that the Avos were born in Nisan, he claims that they will die in Nisan. What's pshat? Manda Omer b'Nisan, Noldu b'Nisan Mesu. According to the opinion that birth and death both occurred in Nisan. Manda Omer b'Tishrei, Noldu b'Tishrei Mesu. And the one who says they were born in Tishrei has to say they'll die in Tishrei. Shenemar, as you state in Pusik, v'Omer aleihem ben ameya esrim shana anochi hayoy. Moses, at the end of his life, at the end of his 30-day drasha, told the Jewish people, today is my 120th birthday. V'ein Talmud Lomer Hayom. Now, he didn't have to say, he could have said, Bein Meya V'Esrim Shana Anoisi. I'm 120. He didn't have to say today. could have left that out of the pasuk. Mal Talmud Lomer Hayom. So Hayom is available for a drasha. What's the drasha? Hayom Molu Yemei Ushinosai. We say, may your years and days be full. And here it's exactly both years and days are full. He's 120. L'lamdecha, to teach us shehakadosh baruch hu yoshev umamale shenoseihem shel tzadikim miyom liyom mechodesh l'chodesh. So this is to teach us that when it comes to great tzaddikim, God is aware not only of their existence, not only of their years and their months, but of their day-to-day behavior and activity, and he fills their days and years. Shenemar es mispar yamecha amale, I will fill the number of your days. So since the patriarchs were tzaddikim gemurim, the Tanaim argued that they lived and died, that just like Moshe, they lived and died on the same day. Pesach, next. Pesach, Noda, Yitzchak both agree that Yitzchak was born on Pesach. Menalan, how do we know that? Tiksiv, we have a pasuk. Lamoed Ashuv Elecha. The three malachim that we learned about on Shabbos, they came to visit Avraham when he had his bris. They said to him, "We'll be back on the next moed. We'll be back, not like they'll be back on moed, and you're gonna have and Sarah's gonna have a baby." Amos Kai, when did they make this prophecy to him? If you say, as we do, that they visited on Pesach, then logically the next holiday would be Shavuos. But that can't be right. Could Sarah have gotten pregnant on or about Pesach and had a baby by Shavuos? That's only 50 days later. Ella dekoy Atzeres. So let's say maybe they came to visit on Atzeres, and this Gemara is not going to ignore the Medrash that said they came on Pesach. V'ka'omer le'tishrei. So let's see, if they visited on Shavuos, then the next moed is Sukkot. Okay? So Akati b'chamisha yarche miko yolda. But that doesn't work either, because there's only 5 months between Shavuos and Sukkot. Ella dekoy b'chav. So they must have visited on Pesach. I'm sorry, on Sukkot. The Ka'omer Lebanisa, and the next holiday would be Pesach. So now that's already theoretically possible. So I have to interrupt and explain. According to the Torah, a baby born in its 9th month, not just after 9 months, but anytime in its 9th month, is considered a full-term baby. A baby born anytime in the 8th month of gestation is considered a critically ill premature baby. Today they can deal with it, but those babies, mistama, virtually always die. However, a baby born in the 7th month, although it's not 9, the halacha considers such a baby likely to live, and it's not considered premature. Okay, so now keep all that in mind. So now we have 6 months between Pesach and between Sukkot and Pesach. Akati kishisa yarche mika yolda. But just a minute, Bird just said 7 and 9. From Pesach, from Sukkot to Pesach is only 6. The math doesn't work. So Gemara says, Oso Shana Me'uberes Hoisa. That year was an Uber year. So there were now 7 months between Sukkot and Pesach. So nonetheless, Kim Madle Mar Yuma Tuma. But just a minute, if Sarah is to all of a sudden become a young woman, and is going to begin anew after her original menopause, having new menstrual cycles, so she can't get pregnant in the middle of Sukkot. You got to give her time to menstruate and to count Yomim Nikiyim. So we're back below 7 months again. Batra lahu, that diminishes the theoretical 7-month count of the Uber year. So Omer Marzutra, Afilu Lamanda Omer Yoledis Letitia, Ena Yoledis Limikutoin, even according to the view that women who have full-term babies, the baby is never even a couple of days premature. Yodeles l'shiva, yodeles l'mikutoin. But they do agree that a 7th month baby doesn't have to be 7 full months. Shenemar v'yehi l'tekufos hayomim. It happened with regard to Chana after 2 tekufos, and after tekufos and shanim, after seasons of the year and after days. So let's do the math. Mia tekufos shtayim. The least number of seasons that can be plural is 2 seasons. That gives us 6 months. And miyuta yomim shnayim. The smallest plural number of days is 2. So now we have with Chana, who gave birth to Shmuel after 6 months and 2 days. So we could give Sarah the same count, and after 6 months and 2 days, and we had 7 months, so she has time to have a period, she has time to count the kiyum, she has time to go to the mikveh, they even have time to get some practice in, because they haven't been sleeping together for a while, and she could have the baby in Nisan. Rosh Hashanah Nakfa Sarah Rachel V'Chana. We both agree that it was Rosh Hashanah that the barren women were remembered and were told they will eventually have children. Minalan, how do we know this? Now we're going to do 2 Gezerah Shabbos, and they're going to add up to giving us all 3 women being remembered on Rosh Hashanah. Omer Rav Elazar. Rav Elazar explains like this. Isa Pekida Pekida. We make a Gezerah Shava from the word Pekida in one pasuk to the word Pekida in another pasuk. Ice is Zechira. We make another Gezerah Shava with the word remembrances in one pasuk and Zechira remembrances in a second pasuk. Okay. Ksiv Barachel, it says about Rachel. The Yizkor Elokim es Rachel, God remembered Rachel and promised her she'll have a baby. Uksiv B'Chana, and it says by Chana, the Yizkereho Hashem, God remembered her. So Asya Zechira, May Rosh Hashanah. But now we have the 2 are remembered at the same time, but we don't know when it is yet. So we do a Zechira from Rosh Hashanah. Okay, Dixiv Shabbason Zichron Teruah. Rosh Hashanah is a rest day in which we remember blowing the shofar. And so now we have Zechira, and we have Chana and Rachel on Rosh Hashanah. Now we have to do Pekida. You have to do the 2 Pekidas. B'Chana, it says, Ki Pakad Hashem es Chana. God remembered Chana. She's in both Gezerah Shavas. She's the bridge lady. Oksiv Sarah, V'Hashem Pakad es Sarah. God remembered Sarah. So now we have Chana and Rivka and Sarah all linked to Rosh Hashanah through the two Gezerah Shavas, and that's the raya that God remembered all three women in Rosh Hashanah. Now, for Rosh Hashanah, Yotzi Yosef Mibeis Asurin. Manolan, how do we know that Rosh Hashanah is when Yosef got out of jail? Diksiv, Tiku b'chad shofar b'kesel yom chagenu, tichok b'Yisrael hu, etc. Blow the shofar when the moon is hidden. When it's covered on the Chag, it's a judgment day for Israel. Turn the page. So, Eidus b'haisiv shmo v'tzeisai. The very next pasuk says, even though it misspells the typical spelling, that day is an Eidus, is a day of testimony for Joseph. So therefore, that's the day that Joseph was, it's a judgment day and the testimony. So that means that's the day that Joseph was given a decent judgment finally and got out of jail. Rosh Hashanah, Batla Avoda Me'avoseinu Mitzrayim. What about the next? They both agree that the actual slavery was ceased on Rosh Hashanah. Ksiv Hacha says in one pasuk, V'hotzeisi eschem mitachas siv lois Mitzrayim. I will free you, take you out from under the burdens of Egypt. V'ksiv Hasam, it says in another pasuk, Hasirosi metevel shichmai. I'm sorry, the sevel shichmai, that I will take the burden, the package off his shoulder. So again, we have a Gezerah Shava, that the same day that Joseph's burdens were lifted, later, that was my service, the Simon the Banim, that later on the Jewish people's burdens would be lifted on that same day. The Nisan Niglu. How do we know the Jews were redeemed in Nisan? Kiddusisa. We have a whole Sefer Shmois that tells us that this happened in Nisan. And now wrapping up the Brisa, the Tishrei Asidin leGoel. And in Tishrei, according to Rebbe Lezer, they'll be redeemed. And again, according to Rebbe Yeshua, it would be in Nisan. So how does he say it would be in Tishrei? Asya shofar shofar. He makes a gezerah from the shofar associated with Rosh Hashanah to the shofar associated with Mashiach. Ksiv Hacha says in one pasuk, Tiku b'chodesh shofar, on this month blow the shofar, the new moon. But Ksiv Hasam, it says that b'yom hahu, at that particular date, Yitaka shofar gadol, the great shofar will be blown. So that's how he does it. Rabbi Yeshua Omer ben Nisan Nigal. Rabbi Yeshua says that the redemption will occur in Nisan. The Nisan Asidan Ligael. That's when the redemption will occur. Minalan. How does he know that? Omer Kra, the pasuk says, and we go remember this every year at the Seder, Leil Shimurim. At the first, when we open the door and we say Shvach Chamaska, we say it's a Leil Shimurim, a day of now Shimur has several meanings. Shimur could mean waiting or anticipating. It could mean guarding. So he is interpreting it to mean a moment of waiting. Leil Shumar Uba Mesheshis Yemei Bereshis. And he says that since everything was fabricated or anticipated during the 6 days of creation, God picked a time for Geulos in the 6 days. So if the big Geula of Yetzias Mitzrayim was in Nisan, it is reasonable to infer that the even bigger Geula at the end of the current Golus will be in Nisan. And that's that it's a day of anticipation. The Idach, what does Rebbe Eliezer do with the word Leil Shimurim? Laila HaMeshumar Abo Min HaMazikim. It is a day in which the Jews are guarded by Hashem from all sorts of harm. And there's actually in Halacha that the Hamapil sort of service that's maybe 12 minutes long, depending how fast you read, when you say Kriya Shema and then you say Hamapil and Hamalach HaGoel and all that stuff, you don't have to do all the extra stuff on Seder night. You're up late enough, say Kriya Shema and go to sleep. Some just say Hamapil, some don't even say Hamapil. Okay. Now we're getting into some tricky stuff, okay? And I will say up front, I can read it, but I have no idea what it's talking about. There is a concept, it's actually a machlokes Ramban and Rambam, as to what efficacy astrology has. The Rambam says, ridiculous. There's no such thing. The Ramban is very heavy into astrology. And that is a major strain in Yiddishkeit. However, they say, Ein Mazalas Yisrael. Jews are not predetermined by astronomical events. So when you read the astrology column in your local newspaper, for the Goyim, that works, maybe. But for Yidden, don't bother because it doesn't work. So we're going to get into some astrology here. Okay? The Azdu L'Tanayu, both of the Tanayim follow their own rationale in the following brisa. The Sanya, we have a brisa that says, Bishnas Sheish Me'as Shana, at the 600th year, Chai Noach, of Noach's life, B'chodesh Hasheni, after the second month, B'Shiva Aser Yom L'Chodesh, on the 17th day of the month. And then the pasuk continues to say that the subterranean water, what we would be consider the aqueduct, whatever they're called, under the earth, gushed up. And not only did it rain down, but water poured up as well. Okay, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, also Hayom, Shiva Aser the Iyar Haya. This was the 7th day of Iyar, which is 2 months after Nisan. And now he gets 17th, the 17th, I'm sorry. Now, there is, in addition to the 12 major constellations, there are minor constellations. And if you go with the astrology stuff, the position of a constellation in the heavens has an effect on what happens on Earth. So there's a constellation called Kima that is seasonal. So the idea is when Kima rises, the waters in the ground come closer to the surface. And when Kima lowers, the waters in the underground go lower, and there's a drier period. In any event, Yom Shemazel Kima Kol Ashoket Bayai, that on the 17th of Iyar, the constellation Kima goes below the horizon while before the sun sets. O mayonos mismaitin, and therefore the subterranean waters lower. So if you have a well that you can drink from, when Kima goes down below the horizon, then your well could dry up. You may have to dig it deeper. Okay? Umitoch shinu ma'aseihem. And since humanity at the time of Noah really messed up and changed the teva of how human beings are supposed to behave, so Shina Kadosh Baruch Hu Aleihem Ma'aser Bereishis. God reversed the normal sequence of how things are supposed to be. So when Kina went down, instead of the waters lowering, they rose, but they were already near the surface. So when they rose, they gushed up and contributed to the Mabul. Okay? And he turned, instead of it going down, he made Kima come up. And not only that, but he took 2 stars away from this constellation, Kima, from the constellation Kima, the Heavy Mabul, and he used the energy of those stars to generate the energy of the Mabul. So I'll just do a little bit more. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer, he says the same deal. Also hayom sheba aser me'mar cheshvan hoy. He said it's the 2nd month after Tishrei, that's Mar Cheshvan. Yom Shemazel Kima Ola Miyon. That is the time frame in which Kima rises while the sun is still in the sky. O Miyonos Mis Gavrim. And the subterranean waters are stronger, are closer to the surface. Umitoch sheshina ma'aseihem, since the human beings messed up, Shina Kadosh Baruch Aleihem Ma'aser Bereishis, God messed up the natural order of things. V'ala Mazel Kima Miyoim, and he caused the constellation Kima to rise in the daytime. And he took away 2 stars from Kima, the Heavy Mabul Oilam, and he brought the flood upon the earth. And I have no idea which 2 stars they were. I don't even know about Kima, except I think it's sub-constellation, and Art Scroll has footnotes, but if you read them, you still don't know what it's talking about. And have a great day. What do I do?
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
thank you, Rabbi Burl.
I'm glad we got this without any complications today.
It was
It was a
not a
good
problem at
connection.
all.
Good connection.
Good. Take care.
Bye.